Hey everyone, Bandana here, I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at a remaster of a classic point-and-click adventure game from days gone by, or well, 2002 to be exact, before some of my viewers were even born. That game is Syberia Remastered, and many thanks to the developer and the publisher for the key. Sadly, I missed out on the original, though it was always on my list to try at some point, so I was very excited when the remaster appeared on my radar. For some this will be a trip down memory lane, and for others a very new experience. The Syberia series has always been well regarded for its story and setting, and it's fair to say that the remaster remains true to form, with a series of stunning locales remodeled in flashy modern 3D graphics, while maintaining the voiceovers of the original game, which, in all fairness, weren't half bad. They've also opted to leave in the original video sequences made back in 2002 with early CG, I guess in a similar way to how the CNC remasters handled things, though whether this is a cost-saving exercise or to pay homage to the original, I just don't know. Since playing this, I have watched some of the original game in a playthrough on YouTube, and I can say that generally speaking, it does a really good job of maintaining the original artwork styles from Benoit Socal. With a somewhat whimsical world, some very stereotypical characters, a little humour and some tense moments, the game has a little bit of everything, though you won't find any combat in this one. The game runs about 6 to 7 hours depending on how fast you get around and complete all the puzzles. When it comes to the game's story, it is rather fantastical, as you are thrust into a world of weird and wonderful automatons. And that's automatons, not robots, by the way. The locals really don't like when you use the term robots, which did leave me wondering why a gardener then called them robots a little while into the game. Anyhow, from basic moving parts to almost sentient AI, you get a real mix of automatons in the game. Of course, there is equally a lot of focus on the human aspects, and perhaps a little bit of crossover between the two if you read between the lines. The protagonist, Kate, a lawyer from the USA, is thrust into a business trip to the French Alps, where she sets out to solve the mystery of a missing heir to the Vorarlberg factory, to get a purchase deal done for her rather aggressive boss. While she becomes obsessed with this path, people in her life back home become equally obsessed with themselves, and it leads down some very obvious paths by the end of the game, but no spoilers. She will embark on a journey across Europe into former Soviet lands, which have a rather weird dystopian take on the world at the time. I don't want to say too much more in fear of spoiling any surprises, so the story will be ended there from my point of view. On a personal note though, I will say more than once during this rather whimsical tale I expected to be taken to see my character in a coma, and all of this being some kind of dream, aka along the lines of American McGee's Alice, and all of the phone calls you receive from friends being friends and relatives at your bedside, though it didn't happen as yet, but there are 2 other games in the series, so who knows? Well, I guess the people who've already played the originals. The gameplay is exactly what you would want and expect from a point-and-click adventure game. I had a few bugs in the earlier version I was given originally, but these have thankfully been solved for release, though even with those bugs it was an otherwise fairly smooth experience and an enjoyable one at that. I will note it's my understanding there have been a few changes from the original game which may or may not bother you if you're a big fan of the original. You can explore areas freely, everything that can be interacted with is made fairly clear, and the game gives solid hints and tips within the journal that Kate is keeping as you go along. So if you are ever stuck, do check there, as it helped me out a few times. I will note, however, that I played the game on the default story difficulty mode, but there is also an adventure mode which provides less assistance. I found the game makes every effort to keep you on track, and the puzzles that seem confusing will often have a solution posted close by. Generally speaking, all of the puzzles are very reasonable, and nothing is overtly trying to make your life difficult, which is nice. As ever with an adventure game, leave no stone unturned and no path unfollowed, and you will get through it without an issue. And remember to always go back and check previous areas, as things do change along with the story progression. And of course, the story will indeed progress. Your aim, as ever with these story-driven point-and-click adventures, is to explore and learn more about the world and its inhabitants, and the game does a good job of keeping this flowing reasonably well without shoving huge amounts of text to read in your face. You'll also get regular phone calls from a group of people at home: your boss, your mother, your fiancé Dan, and work friend Olivia. I will let you decide how you feel about them all yourselves by the end of the game. Do let me know in the comments how you feel about them, either now if you've played it already, or, well, after you've played it if you're going to. Interestingly, I felt the phone calls got more annoying and intrusive towards the end of the game, but I think this is very deliberate, to try and make you feel how Kate must feel with all of these interruptions and various, let's call them updates from home. In some ways, it's quite clever. All in all, it is a classic take on a story-driven adventure game. I would say that things were generally pretty smooth in terms of interacting with objects and the other people in the world, the NPCs. I would, however, note that there were a couple of times the camera angles could have been a little bit smoother. That was very infrequent, and I wouldn't say it affected the gameplay that much. Visually, the game is very appealing, with a variety of unusual but very well-styled environments. The architecture in particular is very nice, and there is a university section where the interiors really blew me away. All based on the original artwork of Benoit Sokal, the original artist who sadly passed away back in 2021. It has just dawned on me that there are actually references in the game to the earlier title of his called Amazon from 1999, of which there has also been a recent remake, and I will mention something about that in the summary. If I had one complaint about the visuals, it would be that the player character Kate is a little bit wooden and zombie-like while walking around. She has very dead eyes, for lack of a better term. It doesn't detract much from the gameplay, but it's just a bit of a shame. Now, one other thing to mention, I guess, in the graphics section is the fact that they reused the original videos, and that is probably a mixed bag. Obviously, it saves time and money and equally pays homage to the original by keeping them in, but some players might feel disappointed that they were not also remastered. I was personally not too bothered by it, but again, fans of previous remasters of these titles may feel differently. When it comes to sound, the voiceovers are reasonable. They seem to have been reused from the original game, and I guess why change what is not broken? You get a variety of, shall we say, fascinating characters with interesting voices and little stereotypical flares thrown in. Some are certainly voiced better than others though, and you could maybe accuse one or two of being a bit wooden, but generally I thought they were pretty good. The game's general sounds are solid throughout, and the music was pretty good, though a little bit lacking, as I just felt like I had the same track repeating over and over a few times. A little bit more variety would have been appreciated, because, as I say, the music was pretty nice. Syberia Remastered remains true to its namesake, or at least I would think close enough for most people. It is given a fresh paint job, maintains its classic voiceovers and the architectural styles beloved in the original, with some minor changes to the gameplay. It's everything I would expect and want from a point-and-click adventure game. The rather fantastical story keeps you wondering what is actually going on and leaves you free to make plenty of assumptions about where things are going, which I think is a mark of a good story. It's certainly a weird and whimsical tale, so don't expect too much realism here. The game admittedly left me wanting more and wondering what the stories of the follow-up titles are like. It's unclear if they will be remastered at this stage. It may well depend on how this one does. I will note any issues are generally minor, such as a few slightly awkward camera angles, while thankfully the other bugs I encountered had been resolved by release, so that was pleasing to see. What fans of the previous so-called games may find disappointing is that this is a bit of a downgrade compared to the Amazon remake, as noted by multiple Steam forum users. But I understand the studio that worked on the Amazon remake was actually shuttered earlier this year, due to cost-cutting exercises that have plagued much of the industry. I note this just for those who are maybe fans of the series and have already played that previous remaster and maybe would be disappointed by this one not going quite as far. At a total time of 6 to 7 hours, it might be considered a little on the short side, though this is a fairly common thing with these adventure games. Score-wise, approaching this as a new title as it was for me, I would happily score it at about a 7 out of 10. It plays well, the story and characters are fun if not a little crazy, and it left me wanting more, which I consider a good sign. The only shame being, again, as I note, it is perhaps a little on the short side. Otherwise, it drops the extra points for, well, a few little bugs here and there in terms of camera angles, obviously the issue with the main character looking like a zombie, and, well, the lip syncing could do with a bit of work as well. Now, the normal price for this title is £26, which is a bit of a discount compared to the previous remaster I mentioned, so I think they are aware it doesn't go quite as far. And there is currently a 10% discount for release, making it a little over £23, which I don't think is unreasonable, though I would have liked to see a £20 price point for a game of this length, especially when these games sadly have little replayability. Price is always very subjective though, so you will have to make the final decision yourself, but there are always plenty of Steam sales. Do let me know down in the comments if you've played the remaster and how you feel it compares to the original if you've played it. Equally, let me know what your thoughts were on the previous games, because I know that they did a recent The World Before game based on the Syberia franchise, and obviously the Amazon remaster, and those who've played those will know better than me how this one compares. But thank you as ever for watching. Please do like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you all soon for another review.